Good
Good afternoon, Rabbi. How are you?
You're sitting and waiting.
Good afternoon, Rabbi.
Shalom Ezra. We're right on time today.
Yeah.
We're doing great. So, I drink. Sure.
Yeah, I'm in the car park now. I'm getting ready to leave.
Okay. Dr. Ben's black straps are to show up.
I'm sorry?
Who's attending? Science Rebbe. Dr. Ben has got his signature picture on the. Okay, so we're starting. We're going back to Tefresh Ayin Beis. It's Man Lokas Ner Chanukah in concepts that come from a deeper perspective on halacha and how halacha teaches us how to be. Halacha teaches us how to be Eved Hashem. So the Tefresh again in this inimitable way keeps on coming up with absolutely amazing insights. We know we said that the Malchus Shaman represents Choshech, the Orla, and that the Or of Chanukah and that which the Chashmonaim were able to overcome was to break through the light of the Or of Aaron HaKohen, the light of the menorah. But he says, but there's another bit deeper one, another perspective. Is that what guided Bnei Yisrael throughout the Midbar was the Amud Ha'esh that lit up the Laila. And the Amud Ha'esh, which gave guided Klal Yisrael, is that Or which Klal Yisrael has always retained, and it remains embedded within the menorah, and remains within us in Chanukah. It's the Amud Ha'esh, which tells us how lahor es halayla, to be able to light up the night. When was the Or Haner? When was the Or, the Amud Ha'esh? When did it come to Klal Yisrael? By Shkia. Shkia was when the Amud Ha'esh and the Amud Ha'ana would change positions. So therefore, the Or Ner Chanukah makes sense that it should start from Shkia, because that's when the Amud Ha'esh would light up Klal Yisrael, Hiluch B'Midbar, Eilach B'Choshech. So then he asks the kasha. It says, but if that's the case, and the whole premise of the Nes is Persumanistas to be able to give Klal Yisrael the guidance, what good does it do to light the Ner Chanukah from Plag Ben Chanan? Because that's what halacha says, that if the person sees he's not going to have time, they can light the Ner Chanukah from Plag Ben Chanan. But that there's enough shemen to last them all the way until the Choshech. If that's not the Zman for the Persum Nisa, if that's not the Zman of the Amud Ha'esh, if that's not the Zman of Hadlaka, of being able to be Meir Es Halayla, what good does it do to light it, even though the light's going to continue all the way to Choshech? That's a great kasha. So he says, this says that the fact that Klal Yisrael had the Amud Ha'esh to Lahor Lahem Es Halayla was only because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was guiding Bnei Yisrael in order to be able to reach Klal Yisrael, to reach Madrega, which they would be able to be zecher to go into Eretz Yisrael. And so therefore, at times when Klal Yisrael was not zecher, the Amud Ha'esh would leave them. So that's after the Chet Egel. Chazal tells us that the Chet Egel, the Anana Kovid, which included the Amud Ha'esh, was not available to Klal Yisrael. The Amud Ha'esh, from Ma'aseh Egel all the way till Yom Kippur, or some say till Sukkot, there was no Amuda, there was no Anana Kovid. That's one reason why Sukkot is connected Anana Kovid, because the Anana Kovid came back on Sukkot after Yom Kippur, right? So the whole premise of Klal Yisrael's protection, of having the Anana Kovid and the Amud Ha'esh and the Amud Ha'esh to protect Klal Yisrael was dependent upon Klal Yisrael's Ma'asim Tovim. And it depends upon our ma'asim. It depends on our willingness to bring that or is depend upon our actions. So therefore, he says it's possible to think about that we are able to do this ma'asim pulos hayoim, pulos of the or hayoim, even during the day, bring that light and start it going, even though we can't see it, because since it depends upon our ma'asim tovim, our kabbanis and our ma'asim tovim, and that's the relation we have with Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's possible for Knesset Yisrael, Klal Yisrael, to even begin bringing back the Amud Ha'esh, to bring the protection of the Amud of the Anana covered, even though we are not yet aware of what the benefit's going to be. So therefore, he says, just like the Amud Ha'esh led Klal Yisrael in the derech that they would have to go, he says that's the mashal for that is Pesach Habayis, where you walk into your house. He says that's the place where you would say, oh, that's where the Pesach Habayis represents the Amud Ha'esh in every Jewish home. And it says, and that's why the mitzvah of Halachas Chanukah should be by Pesach Habayis, because that's the place where Klal Yisrael would lead Klal Yisrael in the mashal of the Amud Ha'esh. It would lead them which derech to go. What's the Pesach? What's the opening? What's the place that you should travel? Okay. And therefore, the place with which the place, how high the Ner Chanukah should be, which is really but really was the Zohar says from Zayin Tvachim to Yud Tvachim. That's the real place for it, and the Zayin Tvachim represent the midas. And therefore, when a person should lift themselves up, we have to prepare our midas so that we can have the ner shine through to all of our midas, which would then be Zayin Tvachim. The Zayin Tvachim represents the Zayin midas, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzchay Yisoid, Abba, V'yira, Hisparos, and Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Nitzchias of Torah. Right, those are the Zayin midas with which are the 7 Tvachim of our world, in which the purpose of Chanukah is to light up all of our midas, to give us that ability to be able to see the Or Hashem shining through all of our midas. He says, but just that we understand that our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu is just like our shoes are the means with which we walk in our world. The purpose of shoes are to protect our feet from the stones and the thistles and the thorns of our world. So is our body is a premise for our neshama, and therefore the whole premise of bringing that or is to bring the or all the way down to the raglayim, to bring it down so that the Shechina has its place in our world, and we're able to experience that in our nefesh and ruach. Rosh Hashanah nefesh ruach ner. So we're able to experience that nefesh ruach, that ner, should shine down all the way down to raglayim. Therefore, the mitzvah, he says, therefore the mitzvah is ad shetichle regel min hashuk. As long as we're able to have the regel is going to bring that or down to our nefesh ruach, that's the zman halakas ner. That's halakas zman halakas ner Chanukah. I love the mishalom. This is the mishalom, which is great. And since the Oros of Ner Chanukah are of such lofty nature, right? They represent the Or of the menorah, the Or, we said the Amud Ha'esh, they represent the highest of Oros that can come out to our world. So the Or HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Ein Sof, can come into our world for as much as our world can tolerate it, and then it's nis'ala, it lifts up our world And the Or then is Nis'ala, the word terms are nostalgic, it leaves our world because it's a process of Rotza V'Shav. The light comes in and leaves us, helps motivate us to go look for it, to bring the light. He says that therefore, the Zman Hadlokas, the Shir for Hadlokas Chanukah, is a limited amount of time. It's a limited amount of time. It's the Kechaber Chatzi Shah. It's not something that we could tolerate, that we can bring into our world to light up all the darkness, but it's there enough so we can get the taste, the feeling of the Or, and help lift us up. And then the Or is nostalgic. Then the Zman Hadloka is the Zman Hadloka. It's over Chatzi Shah, and you're allowed to have a Nor from the Neris. A Nor from the Shaman. You use the Neris, because once you brought that world, once we brought that Or into our world, for at least the Kechatzi Shah, the sheer of how much we can tolerate that Or. We can't live by that Or all the time. It's too strong, it's too great. It's a moment in the midst of the darkness when we're able to bring that light into the world, but it's also a limited amount of Or that we can tolerate. And therefore the sheer's Kechatzi Shah, it's not to let it burn the whole night. It's Adrabah. I put the process of Sumanisa is for us to see the light and recognize that we're not yet Zercha to the Or yet of Mashiach, not yet Zercha to the Or of the menorah to be back in our lives also. Because the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash they were made of the Neres, and then it would be lit and go all the way 24 hours a day, because in the Zman of Beis Hamikdash, it was still possible to have the Shechina in Klal Yisrael 24 hours a day. They would have Mehatov Saneris, they would refill them, relight them, keep them lit 24 hours a day. Ner Tamid. Ner Tamid, Lahalos Lo Ner Tamid. That was possible to have Ner Tamid. We're not capable yet of having that Ner Tamid. So at least we can recognize that we are the place where we bring the light in, and the light is only how much we can tolerate, which is until we can create a Pesum Nisa, and then after that, the Or is nostalgic. The light ascends to a higher level. But that then depends upon how we use it. He says, obviously, if a person wasn't able to do it earlier, you keep it as Zman is Kol Halayla. As long as there's the Cheshach, as long as we're in Golus, there's still Zman to be able to bring it. However, if a person missed that night, they can't be mashlim it, because the Oros of every single day are a unique process. And we know every day of the week has another cheshbon of our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Each one has its own unique characteristic. The same thing for the 8 days of Chanukah. Each one represents, as brought down the Kavanas of Ner Chanukah, that we go from going from right to left, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Yesod, etc. And that's the first Kavanas for the first bracha. The second bracha goes the other way around. Goes from Keser going down all the way to Chesed. There's just, the terminology that we understand that the two brachas are to give us the path, but then each night is a separate, different Or. You can't be mashlim if we missed the night before. What we can do is focus on the Or that comes that night. He says you can't be mashlim, you can't make up and add another lechtel, like we say, like Shabbos, you can add another lechtel. You can't do that on Ner Chanukah, because each yom is a unique Or, and if a person couldn't light, they would light the next night. Just keep on lighting Keseder Olam. However, since the moshel is that it's like that Or comes into our world, as we say, like the neshama comes into our body, and the body has the moshel to our shoes. This the process of hilach haregel. So it's possible to move that Or when we can't do it for Pesach Habayis, we can move that into our homes, because it's possible for us to come to a place where we bring the Or wherever it's possible to bring the Or. even if it's only for a person's b'nai bias of self there, right? The windows are closed, nobody else can see it except for oneself and the b'nai bias. That is possible for us to bring in no matter where we are, no matter where we have to go. And that's the greatness of Ner Chanukah, is the Ner Chanukah is able to travel with us and go with us no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing. And that's one of the reasons why it seems that there's all sorts of fascinating stories of how Yidden lived Chanukah left in throughout the Holocaust, throughout the difficulties that Klal Yisrael, and they still kept the Neros Chanukah burning. Sometimes a great Mesiras Nefesh. The story which I read and I told to my Edom, Chaim Jungreis. He didn't know the story until I told it to him. His Zayda Tzor V'Sharuv, trying to remember his first name. Okay, it's escaping me. I'll come back to it. Was in Auschwitz. It was one of the Hungarian Rabbanim who was taken to Auschwitz in the last period of time. They were there for the last Chanukah, that winter of Chanukah in Auschwitz. He says, it came to Chanukah, they wanted to light Ner's Chanukah, but there was no way that they had Ner. And they were sitting in the bunker, and somebody said, the base, tonight is Chanukah, we don't have it. And somebody said, what are you talking about, that Chanukah? Look what's happening around us. We don't know. They took off his hat and he threw it up in the air. He says, who needs this? And it hit the beam over their head, and a box fell down. And the box was candles. The box of candles like Chanukah Lech. He says, and all of a sudden they lit Chanukah Lech in Auschwitz that night in the bunker. I mean, in the barracks. But they said how is it possible? How is it possible that there should be a box of Lecht in the concentration camp? How is it possible? But then they remembered that the Sakmarov had been there. Had been there and managed they transported him out with one of the famous transport. What was his name? The famous Askin.
Kastner.
Yeah. Managed to get him out. They said, you know what? The Sakmarov probably had Chanukah Lech with him because he was good at going. They probably may have it with him. So after the war, the Tzor V'Sharuv came to America, and he came to Sakmarov. He says, Rebbe, as me Ebergelas Chanukah Lech in the lager, and the Sakmarov smiled. He smiled. So you see, Klal Yisrael, this is an interesting little story. So it's my Edom Chaim is his angle that Klal Yisrael's the connection of Klal Yisrael of the Or Mitoich HaChoshech is such a strong one that the Ner Chanukah is able to bring light into the darkness, even if it's only temporary. Only if it's temporary. It only needs to be kichatz shah, only needs to be half of an hour, not even a complete hour, just a little bit. That the Or of Chanukah is that important to Klal Yisrael to keep us going through the darkness without having to lose the sight that it's possible to have hope. That we will be guided by the by the Amud Ha'esh. We'll be guided by the Or HaMenorah that will be able to burn 24 hours a day, guide us through all of the darkness of our world. And given that our world right now is struggling with such darkness, it is the light of our Torah, the light of our mitzvahs, that will be zeicha that Kadosh Baruch Hu would bring Poyal Yeshuas for Klal Yisrael, zeicha that we will be able to see the Or Hashem, as there's so much discussion today. Can we see the Yad Hashem in our world? We'll be zeicha that we'll be able to have a much stronger kesher to Kadosh Baruch Hu that comes through our preparations of bringing the Or of Chanukah through to all the parts of our lives. In the meantime, we have the Neros of Shabbos, And it was interesting. There was a lot of, I don't know if you know that there was a tremendous movement in Eretz Yisrael, and it was passed around here in America also. The women should have light the Chanukah a little bit earlier this Erev Shabbos. Not because it's a political statement. Chas v'sholom. We wouldn't Mishana Minig Yisrael or demand to ask women to light candles because of a political statement. It was because when we're facing such cheshach, then it's up to Klal Yisrael to bring more light into our world, and that every step of Kiddush in our world is one thing. It brings us a step closer to the that we're mitzapim l'Yeshua. So therefore, that light comes to us when we need it. And then afterwards, it recedes, and same thing. It's only the sheer of how long people can see and be part of the Or of the Ner of Chanukah. So even though the Zman in Halacha is, as we said, begins at Shkia, as long as that's our kavan to bring the Or as long as we're going to any time of the night, it's up to us to bring light into the darkness. Everybody have a great day, and Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue just this one insight after the other, just on top of Shayin Be'ez Hashem. We'll continue tomorrow with some more. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Yishkach, Rebbe. A beautiful day to the Rebbe as well.
Shekayach Rebbe.
Okay.
Have a wonderful day.